I recently participated in a vintage upcycling challenge for the Goodwill Glitter Gala. Welcome to Lumen Couture, where the future looks fabulous. I recently participated in an upcycling challenge with Goodwill. If you're not familiar with what Goodwill is, it's a chain of thrift stores, and they also do good for the community by doing things like creating jobs. And the Glitter Gala is their annual fundraiser in Seattle, and part of it is that they do a runway show and they invite local designers to create looks around a theme using things from Goodwill. This year the theme was Runway to the Future, which is a perfect fit for the type of work that I do, and I was invited to join, and the challenge was that I had to create a garment within this theme using 90% materials that I sourced from Goodwill. So bring it on. The first part of the challenge was to source my materials. Now, I'll admit I'm not the biggest thrift shopper or vintage shopper. A lot of my friends always come back with amazing things and are really good at it. That's just never been me. I find I always get overwhelmed, and I've just never been able to find those types of treasures that a lot of other people seem to be able to find at vintage stores and thrift stores. So I was not prepared for what came next. The place where I sourced my materials was not a regular Goodwill. It was actually the warehouse where they put all of the things that don't sell in the regular Goodwill stores. So it was bins and bins of stuff. It was kind of loosely organized into shoes, and there were things like housewares. There was just everything that Goodwill sells at this giant warehouse, but it was just like bins and bins and bins of stuff. So the first moment I walked in, I was very overwhelmed. I had a bit of a sense of what I wanted to find before going in, and luckily the other designers were there and they were really helpful, so we kind of gave each other a heads up of what we were looking for, so it kind of became a collaborative scavenger hunt. I had my eye out for sequins, which always look good with lights, and I just love using sequins. And then as I started finding things, I started collecting different color themes of things that went together. So I ended up finding some gold, some beige, some pink, and started collecting a collection of items within those themes. I ended up getting a pretty good haul of some interesting pieces, and once I got over the initial reaction, it was actually really fun to go through all of the different bins and find all the stuff. I found a vintage dress, this kind of beige dress with puffy sleeves and a little bit of sequins on the front, so I ended up using that as my base. And then I also found a gold sequin dress, and then I found this corset, but not like a pretty burlesque corset. It was kind of like a back brace thing, and that led to the inspiration for what ultimately became the final piece. Once I got home with all my materials, I started to really put together my plan. So with the corset, I took away the front part of it, the ugly part, and salvaged the back, the clasping materials and the tightening materials. I also completely took apart the gold sequin dress, and what I started to do was build a new corset using Shape, which if you've never used Shape before, it's this amazing material that gets hard with heat. So I created a corset out of that, and I had an amazing model, Abby, and she came over and we actually did a custom fitted corset so that it would fit her body perfectly for the runway. And then of course came the lights. Once I had formed the base of the corset out of the Shape, I put the LED strips inside of it, so a couple going across the body, and then I put the gold sequins over top. The vintage dress ended up being the base for my design, so I put the LEDs in the shoulders as well and connected them all into one circuit so that the lights flowed from one side of the dress to the other. And the placemats that I found were actually a really interesting material. They were this gold leaf, so they ended up becoming part of the sleeves, and they were put throughout the dress as well. The dress was coming along, but it still felt a little bit prom dress, so I wanted to do something to really take it more into the futuristic direction. And I had pieces of the placemats left over, so that inspired me to do a headpiece, which really tied it together and make it feel very science fiction. And I put lights in the headpiece as well and connected it onto the rest of the circuit so that everything again flowed together in a continuous cycle. So when I programmed the lights, they were all moving together in unity. I unfortunately had to miss the event itself because I had a speaking engagement, but apparently everyone loved the dress, and the footage and the photos from the runway looked amazing. Doing this challenge was really fun. Not only was it for a good cause, but it reminded me of how I actually started doing wearable tech fashion when I didn't know how to sew so well, and I would use things that were already in my closet and just add lights onto them, which was a little bit like the process of what I did for this upcycling challenge. I've also put the kits and the materials that I used for this online on my Etsy shop, so if you're interested, you can check that out. And this has inspired me to maybe do a little bit more upcycling and potentially do some tutorials on how you can go vintage shopping or take things in your closet and put lights into them so that you don't have to go through the process of creating an entire garment on your own. And it might even inspire me to actually do more thrift shopping and vintage shopping, because once I got into the hang of it, it was actually pretty fun and I started to get really inspired for different themes and looks that I could put together. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more upcycling and more tutorials on how you can do upcycling and take vintage clothes and make them fashion technology yourself. Thanks.